All right, on today's episode, this is part of the series of me teaching you how to program for yourself. Stop buying those skeleton programs, those stupid things that people are just doing just to make money, which is basically there's no specialty in it, or there's not gonna really benefit you in the way that you think you are when you're about to buy them, or what they promise you when you buy them. Okay, so the one thing I want to talk about is accessories. This is the most underutilized thing in the fitness industry that should have more education behind it. It's not taken as seriously because it is a secondary thing to most of the time if you're doing a barbell lift. So it's called an accessory because it is an accessory. It comes secondary to your more main lifts. So people tend to overlook that aspect, and then they kind of just go through the motions when they're doing their accessories. All right, so I want to talk about what is the problem I think in the fitness industry right now when it comes to accessories. There's a lot of wasted time. I'm gonna say that again. You guys are wasting time in the gym. That's just my honest opinion. I'm at the gym, I'm looking around, and I'm watching fuckers waste time. You guys are in there for 2, 3, 4 hours, and then you guys wonder why you're not seeing a difference in your body, or if you are, it's very minimal. It's very small, like the very minute when it comes to changes. And I'm gonna tell you why in a second with the science, but that's the first point I'll make, is that you guys are just wasting fucking time in the gym. There's no rhyme or rhythm, and you're just doing things to do things because you want certain things right now, right? I want big fucking arms, so I'm gonna do bicep curls till I can't wipe my ass when I get home, right? That's what you think you're gonna do. But and a lot of the times that you're just making yourself, your arms smaller. I'm gonna be completely honest. You're probably just shrinking your arms when you do that shit because you're doing 2 hours of bicep curls, or you're doing 2 hours of fucking tricep extensions. Okay, so the first science that I'm gonna throw at you is your metabolic state. What is a metabolic state? Okay, so it's actually when your muscle breaks down, the fibrils after they will tear apart from you actually contracting and your eccentrics. They'll actually tear apart as they're coming apart when you're fighting out your reps. This is your muscle fibers. They're fighting each other apart, and then actually tears the fibrils. So that's when you feel that burning sensation. That's your lactic threshold coming in to repair the tears that you just created through whatever stimulus that you try to get through your lifting. Most of the time it's hypertrophy. You usually don't feel a burn during strength or power training. And if you do, you're probably doing it wrong. But it's usually you feel the burn when you're doing hypertrophy reps. So it could be 8 to 12, 8 to 15, or if you're just hitting that stimulus, you know how to hit that stimulus very quickly. That's what you're feeling, is that the actual lactic acid coming in over the muscle. It burns the muscle group, so it actually repairs those fibrils that were torn apart, and so that it can actually shape back together. So that's what causes the muscle to grow, because you tear and then you put it back together, but then those glycogen and then the fuel that you're putting in your body, like food, the carbohydrates, they come in those little cracks, and then that's what makes it grow. So if I tear and then I fill in some of those spots, then it grows a little bit. Tear, fill it in. So that's why you keep growing. If you become metabolic, if you're not metabolic anymore, you tear it, and then you just keep tearing and tearing and tearing and tearing. There's no part of where the lactic acid comes in and repairs the muscle group. You're just breaking down the muscle group now. Now your muscle wants to become smaller to endure the endurance that you're putting it through. Big muscles traditionally don't have high endurance. That's why when I told in the video before, in the first video, that strength training and heavier weights, they cause diameter muscle. So you see big powerlifters are big puffy and they look like they can't touch their elbows together. It's because the heavier weights have created so much diameter of muscle. And those little fibrils that are sitting inside your muscles, the diameter of those actual fibers are getting bigger. Okay? So, and then when I talk about muscle density with a hypertrophy, that's when the muscles become more dense. So they actually shrink and then they tighten up. Okay, so you ever seen people with big biceps, like they flex and it's just big, and then you see guys that flex and it's very like a little ball and it's like very high peaked, right? That's from hypertrophy. Okay, so that more density, and if I touch it, it's hard. Okay, so that's the two things that I'll get to right now. But if you're not metabolic during your training, you're absolutely wasting your fucking time. You're literally better off just going to a fucking ho-ho or a cupcake at home. You'll get more gains from that than you sitting in the gym doing 30 more minutes of bicep curls. The way I'll explain it is that if I have two people that go for an hour and do the same exact regimen for an hour, and then one leaves and goes home and eats, rests, and just does a regular regimen of like recovery, and the other is like, I'm more hungry than he is. I'm gonna stay after an hour and do fucking an hour worth of bicep curls and shoulder raises. That person is now becoming a detriment to themselves. They're gonna walk in more, and then they're just gonna keep tearing their muscle group down, tearing it down, until it decides that, shit, man, I have to do a lot of work. I'm gonna shrink in size so that I don't have to use so much energy expenditure just to get through these sets. The guy that's going off after an hour and like living life and just like, he might not look, he cares as much, but he's actually out recovering and getting bigger. That's why they say you don't get big in the gym, you get big in the kitchen or when you're resting. Like, how many times have you woke up in the morning and like looked like you never thought you'd look before, just kind of jacked and shit like that? It's like, man, I didn't hit any sets before when I woke up. Like, you have this pump going on. It's because your rest is what gives you size or strength or those things. If you're overworking your muscles with accessories, you're only being a detriment to yourself. So I'm saying this because there's a point to this, okay? So the way that I would say to structure it in the most efficient way possible. So this is a little bit ass backwards from your traditional bodybuilding thing, because I don't think that it's beneficial to do a bodybuilding split with just specific muscle groups. And I'm gonna tell you why right now. Because of becoming metabolic, the chances of you being able to work out an hour to an hour and a half on just a specific muscle group, it's very highly unlikely, unless one of two which things, you are on PEDs. Okay, the average person is metabolic for an hour to an hour and a half. That's if they're doing anything right. If they eat enough carbs, everything like that, they walk into the gym, they're metabolic for an hour, if that, or an hour 30 if they're more advanced. Someone with PEDs can last up to 2.5 hours becoming metabolic. So that's why they're able to break down more muscle groups and be able to refuel them and grow faster than a lot of other people, because the hormones support that stimulus. Okay, so having those muscle groups for long periods of time, it's just not optimal. So you might say this is like a power building way or a powerlifting way, but I base everything off the movement that we're doing that day. So if I'm doing bench press, everything is based off that movement. So when I look at the bench, what primary movers do I have? My chest is a primary mover, my triceps are a primary mover. So then now I'm looking at what are my antagonistic muscle groups. So what's an antagonistic muscle group? It's the muscle that supports the movement, but it mostly supports in stabilization. So what's a stabilizer during my bench press? My lats. My lats are what's stabilizing my arms to go in a certain way, to control the weight down for my chest so it doesn't take all the load. My rear delts are stabilizers, so those are antagonistic muscle groups. My front delts, my side delts, all those things that aren't actually actively pushing or contracting, those are antagonistic muscle groups. So then I'll look at a day like I'm going bench press. Now what am I gonna do as my accessories? Okay, I can go to another compound lift to exhaust my primary movers. So I can go to a dumbbell floor press, dumbbell flat press, whatever, some type of pressing, so that I'm exhausting that muscle group again. But now I wanna go touch on my antagonistic muscle group. So I wanna go hit my lats. So if I'm doing a specific to bench press, I will go to a seated row, exactly mimicking the bench press movement, but in the pulling form. So this is very important, because now this is gonna make you better at bench press. Now I'm gonna have more control on the weight down because I've worked that antagonistic muscle groups. So then now what's gonna happen is your body's gonna wanna grow in size to accommodate for the bigger lift. So that's why your accessories is so important. And it's not just a strength thing. Your body learns to grow as a whole before it does individually. You can go specifically and like work out certain muscle groups hard as shit, and then one day get bigger at them. Yeah, that's if you're eating correctly or if you're doing the right things recovery-wise too, and giving yourself enough rest time. But it's not always perfect, and we want to make sure that we're doing things with enough margin of error that we could still get great results and not be, condemned by our work ethic. Because that's the shitty part for me, and that's one thing I had to learn the hard way, is that it's not about work ethic when it comes to this stuff. It does, like, to a certain percentage, but work ethic can become a detriment to you if you aren't educated or if you're ignorant about what your workouts are. Like, I would do my lifts at school when I was in college, and then after our lifts, I would go and do more of the same shit. Like, we'd be hitting full body lift, and then I would go back in and start hitting other full body lifts, and then more bench press and shit like that, because I wanted a big bench press. And this is when I'm playing Division I football, and then my bench press wouldn't go up anymore. It just stopped. It just plateaued, and I was like, man, I'm working my ass off. So this is what actually made me go into the mindset I'm going to right now, is because I've lived this out. I've done this already. I've plateaued for years, so you don't have to. And I've done the wrong accessories, and I've done them for years and years and years. And to a point I was like, man, I haven't grown in 3 or 4 years. I should probably switch it up. And then once I educated myself in college, and then after college, did I realize, man, I have been wasting a lot of time. I had maybe had some muscle maturity during that time, but man, I could have expedited this process to get where I am now by 4, 5, 6, even 8 years if I would have done it the right way. So this is what this video is trying to teach you guys the right way to do it so that I can expedite your process. So if you wish to be someone like me, or someone that's better than me, or someone that's similar to me, man, I can get you there way quicker if you listen to these little tips right now, because it's gonna make your journey a lot faster. And like, honestly, like, you don't want to be that guy that's wasting all this time in the gym and someone's like, man, you haven't got any bigger, bro. Like, what are you doing wrong? You know, I don't know, I'm eating, maybe I have to take steroids now. No, you don't. You just do it the right way, okay? If you work out and train the right way with enough rest time and enough fuel for you to recover, man, sky's the limit for you. If only when you aren't doing them correctly, you're not educated, do you think you need PEDs or steroids to make it to the next level? No, you should look at all the aspects of your training and then make sure every aspect is perfect before you ever talk about that type of stuff, okay? So we talked about the antagonistic muscle group, so that's how I usually do that. So then now it changes the whole structure of the program, because I'm not working off of bicep and chest split, because I know that it's not optimal in terms of how I break down my muscle to recover my muscle. I'm become way too metabolic way too quickly, and then I'm just gonna break down the muscle group in a bad way after that. Okay, so then if I can split up the work between my chest, my triceps, and my lats and my rear delts, then now, like, I'm actually gonna be growing at a very high efficient rate with optimal rest time, day or two in between each one, and then now you're just see results becoming tenfold quicker than what they were before. All right, so no busy work. That's the word. I hate busy work. That is my biggest pet peeve, and I write that on my programming. And there's days when you have to peak or you have to taper for competition, and I'll write on there, don't you dare touch another accessory, because there's no busy work in this program. I account for everything. You should account for every single lift you do, every single rep you do, and because if you don't have a plan, then you can't plan where you're going. You can't plan for your success in the future. You're just farting into the wind, and you're just running with your eyes closed, basically. And hopefully you don't hit a fucking wall. That's what you're thinking in your mind when you do that shit. So plan, and then write your shit down. Write down how many reps you did, progress that shit next week. Progress that movement. So if I'm looking at a day of, say if I do a bench press day, so I'm doing flat bench press regardless of whatever the repetitions is, I do a flat bench press. Maybe I pull in another compound accessory just to exhaust those primary movers. So say I go a regular bench press, and then I'll throw in a incline dumbbell bench press with some like higher volume stuff with it. Okay, so after that, how many accessories am I gonna do? Okay, the good rule of thumb is when you're in the beginning of your season, so this is like when you first start your first to 4 weeks, first to 8 weeks, you want to front load those accessories, all right? You want to go 2 or 3 accessories, and sometimes you can superset those 2, 3, 4 accessories. So sometimes you could do 2 sets of supersets or whatever, but I would never go past 4 accessories in one day. That is way too much. Even 4 is pushing it. That's even pushing it, depending on which ones they are. Okay, so the good rule of thumb is 2 to 4 accessories after. And there always has to be a linear progression. Always start with more than less in terms of volume when it comes to accessories. I'll start, if I'm at the beginning of my block, I'll start with sets of 20, because you need to create the foundation for setting the tone for the rest of the block. It's the metaphor I can give you is like starting with a big block of cheese, right? If you have a sculpture you want to shape out of this cheese, then you want to start with a big block so you have more room for error, so you can shape it, right? So as the weeks go on, I could shape that workout to go the way I want it to go. But if you start with a small block of cheese, now there's so much more that has to be accounted for, because you have to be way more careful, because there's no margin for error now. So always start on the error of doing a couple more reps than you need to be, but don't err in the side of doing too many workouts in a day. That I can't stress this enough, because this is the one time that your work ethic isn't going to equivalent you to where you want to go as your goals, or what you see your goals to be. So I don't like muscle group splits. I think that, and if you look at some of the great bodybuilders, the Ronnie Colemans, the Arnold Schwarzeneggers, the Jay Cutlers, they didn't believe in that shit either. If you read anything about Arnold Schwarzenegger, he didn't believe in just splitting up muscle groups. He was a compound guy. Compound means a bigger lift, like usually a barbell lift. Compound guy that did those type of accessories that let the body grow more naturally and more fully. And that's the thing too, is that if you want big arms, stop doing bicep curls. Maybe if you do a couple cheap bicep curls or like whatever on like your last things that when you walk out the gym, those are cool. But if you want big arms, do heavy pulls, like do heavy dumbbell rows, do heavy barbell rows, heavy lat pull downs. The biceps grow because they are an accessory to whatever you're doing with your arms. This is such a small movement for your arms. This is a big movement for your arms. This is actually a massive movement for your arms. So any big ass dude you see, he probably does bicep curls, which I still do bicep curls too because of the aesthetics of it and the elbow pain, it leaves elbow pain and tendonitis. But I'm getting my big arm work from my pull days, like my fucking dumbbell pulls, like my upright row pulls, like all those stuff like that. Anything pulling motions of bicep primary mover, basically. It's not as a stabilizer now. My biceps are a stabilizer on my bench press, but not so much in my pulls. Those are primary movers now. So you want to work them in a high capacity. High capacity meaning more muscle groups, more weight, and then just higher compound lifts. All right. So, but if you want to become more metabolic during your sets or during your workouts, the one thing I can suggest is taking an intra-workout shake. So it's very simple. You can do a waxy maize or like some type of carbohydrate. Those will help spike your insulin. So that's why you do it, is because you want to spike your insulin, which is your IGF-1, which is the highest human growth hormone naturally in your body. When you drink something sweet or you eat some candy, that's why you see powerlifters or some bodybuilders eating candy when they're lifting. It's because that spikes their IGF-1 and then it spikes their recovery and their growth. Okay, so it's not the biggest difference, but it will give you some more time to become more metabolic, 20-30 minutes throughout your session. So it does become beneficial if you know how to use your intra workouts correctly and not being a fat shit eating 3,000 Sour Patches during your fucking workout and having this calorie surplus now. All right, so comment below. I hope this helps out. This is probably one of my favorite subjects to talk about because nobody talks about how you're supposed to structure your accessories. And it's such a big part to being a successful lifter, successful bodybuilder, successful any type of athlete. You have to focus on every aspect of training. And if you don't, man, you're falling behind and you're just doing busy work.